I'm taking a guess at this. I cannot do it the way the book calls for because I don't have a special installation tool that the book calls for, which kind of simulates this upper bearing, and this oil hole gets a little roll pin put in that. I guess it's going to be a little bit thinner than this, and then you rotate the crankshaft and it catches that bearing. You'd have to catch it on this side because this locking tab is over here. You'd catch it on this side, rotate it around, and this would come back out the bottom, and then you take it off and then continue to rotate it around again. You could pull your installation tool back off with the little roll pin that goes in the oil hole in the crankshaft. I'm going to take a shot at this. I don't know if I can get away with it, but I'm going to try to do it like this. I'm going to try to install these pieces, these thrust washer pieces, just on these locking tabs. Only one bearing, number 6, is the thrust washer bearing. It's the only one that has these little corners out of it right there. The book says, I guess because of the weight of the crankshaft's going to weigh a couple hundred pounds, so I guess because of the weight of it, you don't want to take loose any more than one main cap at a time. I can understand why the weight of that would put quite a strain on the front and rear main seals. So it says, except for number 6 and number 7, you take both of those off at the same time, apparently. We'll do one at a time. I'm going to see if I can figure out a way to do this without having to buy the special tool. And of course, the bottom end just gets snapped into the cap. Got that first cap off of there. I gotta get that bearing out. Here's the cap, and it's got a, bring it outside here, you can see got a number 1 on it. The little locking tab right here has to match up with the locking tab on the other end. There's a little oil stain right here from the top side that has a tab just like this one. These always go together on the same side. What I'm going to try to do is on this side where that little locking tab right there is, I can't do it from this side because that side's got to come out of that tab right there. So it's got to come out on this side. This side here is the side I got to push that bearing up in there, and I'm going to tap on it very carefully and lightly with a screwdriver. And it's better to make sure the screwdriver has oil on it or grease or something, so that, because you are going to bump into the crankshaft with it a little bit, so you got to be careful you don't scratch it, and certainly don't put it up in there far enough to wedge between the crankshaft and the block. And then once it comes out the other side, we'll start picking at it on the other side from the outside and try to work it out of there. Because the thing is, I'm trying to keep from going and buying another special tool that's made for this. The tool that's made for this kind of simulates an insert, a bearing, and it sticks on the bottom of this, and it's got a hole in it for this, and then you put a pin that goes through the bearing and into this hole, and the head of that pin is kind of below the surface of that bearing, and so you rotate the crankshaft and it rides all the way around and pushes the top one out on its way around, and then you just bring it back around the rest of the way, and then you're back to where you are now, where the bottom is, and then you pull that piece off of there, and you have to wind the new one in that way too. Alright, I pushed it in there, the screwdriver on this side, and didn't have to push very hard, and it just started sliding right out of there, so I can get a hold of it with my fingers and just kind of finish sliding it around. It's hard to do it with one hand, but that's just trying to do it like that. Got it out of there. Here's my new one. It has a little plastic piece on the back. It's the old one. It's always a good idea to just make sure that they are the same. The oil holes lined up and everything, and the tab is on the same side, and everything looks good. I'm going to pour some oil. I got an open bottle of 1030 car oil here, and I'm going to just pour some of that in this coffee cup, so I got something to work from to dip these in. Got some motor oil in there. Coffee cup. We'll just dip that in there. Dip that in there, and then just take my finger and wipe it on there the rest of the way. I'm not able to slide that around like I want it to. I probably could if I was to loosen up the rest of the main caps and let the crank come down a little bit, but that could put a damaging strain on the front main seal. I don't want to do that, so I do have a big ratchet, 3/4 drive ratchet in the front pulley here, and I'm turning it with that, and I can't do it with my camera in my hand because I need two hands to do it, and I'm holding one hand on this and kind of pushing on it, helping persuade it around while I'm turning the crankshaft. I can't hold on to it anymore. The crank is just turning inside of it, so what I'm going to have to do is find a pin of some kind that'll go in this hole, this oil hole. Just glue it in there with some grease and then finish rotating it, and that'll push this on around to where it needs to go. I saw in another video, I forgot about it, but I remember now that a guy used a cotter pin. I don't have a cotter pin big enough where the head will stay on the outside. The biggest one I got, the head actually goes in the hole, but that'll help hold on. I could use a bolt, but then the head of the bolt will hit the block when it rolls around before the shank of it. So I'm going to try with this right here. Just going to grab a scoop of petroleum jelly. That's what it said to use. And that might just stay in there long enough for me to rotate this. See if I can rotate that a little bit while I'm holding the camera. That ratchet could fall out of there so easy. Just 3/4 drive stuff's heavy. One thing that might be tricky is getting that keyway to line up just right. I don't think it did line up. I'm going to have to do that with two hands. I got it to line up. Don't tell anybody, but I stuck a screwdriver right up in here and just pushed it over sideways. And it scooted over and it lined up, so I can push it on in there the rest of the way. Alright, I seated that up there. Now I gotta reverse this big heavy ratchet, and well, it fell out. There it goes, back in there. I rotate this backwards so we can get that roll pin out of there. And then do the bottom, put that on. Well, for the bottom one, it's no big deal. That's the easiest one. Just pop that out of there. Look, I still got water in there a little bit. Well, wipe it off, and you don't even have to grease the bottom one. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and pop this one in there. And then now I got to put a nice coat of oil on this and then put the thing up there. And I'm not going to torque it today because I don't have anyone to help me torque it, because they get torqued real high. I forgot what, but it's in the book, 300 or 400 foot-pounds. So I'm just going to snug it down with a 1/2-inch drive impact, and that'll be good for now. I'm not going to hammer it down tight. I'll just snug it down a little bit so that it's in place, and then I can do the rest of them. And then when I got help, someone to help hold the big torque wrench in place for me while I'm outside pushing on the other end of it 4 feet away to torque it, we'll do that then. I started one bolt and then stuck the other bolt in and started that while I was holding this thing in place, and then I took a hammer and just lightly tapped in the middle here, probably 10-15 times, and each time it was moving a little bit at a time, and so it's seated. I got it seated up there. It moved up about 1/4 inch while I was tapping it until it's seated, and I'm not hitting it hard, just very light taps. And I'm going to go on ahead and take my 1/2 inch impact and just snug these down just a little bit, just lightly. I'm not going to hammer them down tight at all. We got all these mains done, even the thrust bearing one on number 6. We got them all done. I was not able to do it on camera. I apologize for that. I did have to have a helper here to help rotate the engine by the fan. He was up on top turning it by the fan while I was underneath working the bearings around. Yeah, we got it all done. If you hear that background noise, that's him pulling out, because he helped me torque everything. He was holding the wrench, the torque wrench, on the bolts while I pushed on it to torque them. They all get torqued at about 350. And so we got that done, and now I'm going to go up on top and start another job up there.